Story recapped here. Today I'm going to explain a drama, fantasy, and horror film called Wish Upon. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. One quiet morning, Joanna Shannon goes out of the house to throw away something she's wrapped up in a dirty sheet. She then lets her younger daughter, Claire, ride her bicycle with the family dog, Max, down the street. Claire is too happy to even notice that Joanna looks upset, and when she returns home, she unfortunately witnesses her mother hanging herself in the attic. Years later, Claire wakes up from the same nightmare that haunts her mother's death. As soon as her father, Jonathan, leaves for work, Claire rides her bicycle and greets their neighbor, Mrs. DeLuca, and Uncle August on her way to school. She almost gets hit by the car of the popular girl, Darcy, but Claire luckily swerves her bike just in time and crashes into some nearby garbage bins. A little hurt, Claire goes to school with a scraped knee and gets annoyed upon seeing her father dumpster diving there. Claire is frustrated since she already told her father to not do that at her school, but Jonathan doesn't think he's doing anything wrong. His friend, Carl, then notices Claire's wound, so Claire shares about the accident she had in front of Uncle August's house. Jonathan quickly becomes upset upon hearing this, for he doesn't want Claire to talk to that man. However, Claire finds it hard to understand why her father forbids her to talk to Uncle August, but Jonathan just drops the subject and leaves with his friend instead. Later that morning, Claire joins her friends June and Meredith in putting up a school banner in the corridor, but Darcy throws her drink at their work while her buddy Tyler laughs. Once inside the classroom, Ryan comforts Claire about her banner, and Claire deeply appreciates it. She then stares at her crush Paul, contented that she can at least admire him from afar. Meanwhile, Jonathan continues dumpster diving with Paul somewhere and finds a big music box. Back at school, Claire gets in a fight with Darcy after the latter hears her and her friends insulting her. Claire and Darcy engage in a struggle while the other students cheer and take photos of them, but eventually Paul helps one teacher break the girls apart. Claire then goes to Mrs. DeLuca's house that day with a bruised face, so her kind neighbor prepares her a glass of fresh juice. Once Claire gets home, her father informs her about the present he's placed on her bed. In her room, Claire finds a large Chinese music box and discovers that it can grant its owner 7 wishes. However, Claire doesn't believe in that kind of stuff, so she chooses to work on her art homework instead. She then receives a text from Meredith telling her to check her social media account, and when she does, she finds that Darcy has posted a video of their fight. Darcy has also uploaded a picture of Jonathan in a nearby dumpster, insulting him and Claire. With nothing to lose, Claire takes her music box and wishes for Darcy to rot. After making her first wish, Claire realizes that she left Max outside the door. But when she tells the dog to come inside her room, she fails to notice that it refuses to move and just stares at her box. That night, the music box opens on its own and plays the melody while Claire is sleeping. However, it also closes after a few seconds, leaving Claire undisturbed. The next day, Darcy develops necrotizing fasciitis and is quickly rushed to the hospital. Claire and her friends then talk about the mean girl's condition at school, and Claire can't help but wonder if it had something to do with her wish. Meanwhile, Darcy's friends try to raise a fund for her, but Meredith makes it clear that she doesn't care about her. At home, Claire takes a picture of the Chinese characters in her music box before searching Max outside the door. Unfortunately, she finds the poor dog dead in their crawl space, its body eaten by rats. Jonathan and Carl then bury the animal, and Claire can only cry as she recalls that Max was a gift from her mother. In the morning, Claire talks to her Chinese teacher and then asks her to translate the characters for her. However, she tells her that most of the characters are written in ancient Chinese and only a scholar can help her. Hearing their teacher and Claire's conversation, Ryan offers to try and help by saying that his cousin can translate for her, but their conversation is cut short when Ryan's friend makes an offensive remark about Claire. That night, Claire checks Paul's social media account before making her second wish, for Paul to fall madly in love with her. The next day, Claire composes herself as Paul flirts with her even in front of his girlfriend Lola. Meanwhile, Uncle August is preparing for a bath when suddenly he slips and hits his head in the bathtub. He then tries to get up, only to hit his head on the tub spout and bleed to death. When Claire gets home in the afternoon, she learns about the news about her mother's uncle's demise. She then asks her father if they're going to the funeral and wonder what will happen to his belongings, but Jonathan assures her that they're not in the old man's will. Before Claire goes to her room, she bumps into one of his father's metal rods and gets mad he keeps on hoarding. However, Jonathan doesn't seem to be paying attention to her, making her even angrier. Feeling sorry for their situation, Claire takes her music box and wishes Uncle August would leave everything to her. Then it isn't long before John receives a call informing him that Claire has inherited all of Uncle August's assets. Claire can't believe what they've just learned, but they immediately pack their stuff and move into the old man's house. Claire also doesn't waste time spending Uncle August's money, for she quickly calls her friends and takes them shopping. That evening, Claire finally witnesses the music box play a melody, unaware that in Mrs. DeLuca's house, the nice lady accidentally turns on the waste disposal until her hair gets caught in it. She then tries to turn it off, but eventually, her scalp splits and her neck breaks. The next day, Jonathan gives Claire her mother's artwork, and the two can't help but wonder why Joanna took her life. Claire is worried that she might be like her, but Jonathan tells her that while her mother was a good person, she had a rough childhood. Jonathan thinks his wife had secrets that were too big to live with and that maybe it was easier for her to just let go. But that idea doesn't really comfort Claire. That evening, Claire cries as she listens to Jonathan play the saxophone for the first time since her mother died. Later that night, Claire has a nightmare about the music box and suddenly wakes up to see a shadow of a person jumping from the balcony. She then immediately gets out of bed to see who it is, but Claire doesn't find anyone around the area. At school, Paul finally breaks up with Lola and quickly asks Claire to go out with him. He also asks her to go with him to the senior scavenge, but Claire is hesitant and tells him she'll think about it first. After class, Claire asks Ryan to take her to his cousin Gina to help with her music box. They then learn that all of its owner's wishes will be undone once the music box is abandoned, lost, or sold, and that once it belonged to a woman named Lu Mei. Lu Mei and her family were suspected of being infected with the bubonic plague and were quarantined in a train where they died of heat stroke and starvation. Being the only survivor, Lu Mei took her music box and prayed for revenge in the temple for 7 days and 7 nights until a Yaoguai, or a demon, answered. But although she became rich, Lu Mei unfortunately killed herself in 1922. Also, Lu Mei's story doesn't really solve the mystery of the music box, for Claire, Ryan, and Gina still have no idea what the numbers on the bottom mean. Gina then tells them that the other Chinese characters also say that something will happen once the music ends, but just to be sure, she takes pictures of the music box and sends them to her friend for help. Once they're done, Claire thanks Gina for accommodating them, and before they leave, Gina urges her cousin to ask Claire out. On their way home, Claire sees her father dumpster diving with Carl again and gets into an argument with him. Claire doesn't understand what more her father could possibly want, so that night, Claire tells the music box to make Jonathan less embarrassing. Meanwhile, Gina gets worried upon learning the meaning of the other Chinese characters on the music box from her friend. Then, Gina becomes annoyed when the power in her apartment goes out, unaware that the music box has begun playing at Claire's house. Claire immediately gets her wish that evening, for her father returns to playing the saxophone again. On the other hand, Gina fails to tell Ryan the bad news about the music box after she accidentally drops her phone from the fire escape. She then returns inside and walks in the dark, unfortunately tripping and getting impaled on a statue's horn. The next day, Ryan finds Gina's phone outside her place and races to her apartment, where he panics after discovering her body. Meanwhile, Claire finally starts dating Paul and leaves her friends confused. On her way to class, Claire is asked by Ryan if she has made any wishes yet, informing her that Gina is dead and that the line that she couldn't translate meant the blood price is paid once the music ends. Claire feels sorry for Ryan, but she doesn't admit to making any wishes and leaves him instead. Later that day, Paul and Claire piss their friends off as they decide to eat together. At home, Claire asks the music box to make her the most popular girl in school. Paul then texts her that evening and invites her to a party where everyone treats her like the VIP. Paul also kisses Claire for the first time, and she just couldn't feel any happier. However, Claire gets scared when she dreams of taking her mother's place in the attic and hanging herself. She wakes up almost out of breath, and again she sees someone taking pictures of her on the balcony. Frustrated and angry, Claire takes the rake and follows her stalker, only to be startled by her father. Jonathan wonders what his daughter is doing, so Claire tells him that someone might be following her. She then realizes that it started when she got the music box, so Claire hides it in the vent. Meanwhile, Ryan tries to learn more about the music box. The next day, Claire goes to Mrs. DeLuca's house and finally discovers her body by the sink. After some time, Claire reveals to her friends the secret of her music box, but Meredith doesn't believe her. Claire feels bad since she thinks that people have died because of her, so June advises her to just throw the music box away. She then goes out that evening to discard the music box, but upon hearing her father play the saxophone, she decides to hold on to it just a bit longer. Later that night, Claire goes to the senior scavenge with her friends and Paul. However, while making out with Paul, Claire finds one of her stuff in her boyfriend's car and discovers he's been spying on her and taking pictures of her while she's sleeping. Freaked out, Claire immediately breaks up with him, but Paul has no intention of letting her go. Meanwhile, the music box starts playing again, and at the same time, Jonathan calls Claire to tell her that he's got a gig outside of town. Unfortunately, he gets stuck in the middle of the road when one of his tires blows out. Jonathan almost gets hit by a spare tire when it accidentally rolls down the street and bounces off a car, but luckily he manages to duck in time. Back at the senior scavenge, Meredith goes to the 26th floor to play her mobile game, while Claire admits to June that she still has the music box. She then receives a call from Meredith informing her that she's stuck in the elevator and asks her to get someone to help her. However, it isn't long before the elevator cables snap and Meredith is plunged to her death. Her friends can only look at her body in horror, and June blames Claire for what's happening. Ryan then arrives and takes Claire to his apartment, where he reveals that the number on the bottom of the music box is the military ID of one Arthur Sands. He got the music box when he was stationed in China, but he took his life after getting his wishes. The music box then fell into the hands of a man named Lawrence Hart, who ended up losing his mind after his loved ones died. He barricaded himself in his estate near Claire's house, and that's where he died from a massive fire. Finally, Ryan tells Claire that the music box also warns its owner that the Yaoguai will take your soul after the seventh wish is made. On the other hand, Claire ignores Paul's text and begs Ryan to help her get rid of the box. Unfortunately, burning the music box doesn't work, and neither does hitting it with a sledgehammer. So, in the end, Claire is forced to put it back inside the vent. That night, Paul sneaks into Claire's room and slits his wrist when she refuses to take him back, prompting Claire to call an ambulance for her ex-boyfriend. The following day, both Claire and Ryan get confused when the music box goes missing. As if that isn't enough to make Claire upset, the bank repossesses Uncle August's assets after he failed to pay his taxes for 10 years. Claire and Jonathan then return to their shabby house, and she goes back to being a loser. Later that day, Claire sees June and discovers that she's taken the music box. Enraged, Claire forcibly takes it even though June begs her not to, and as the two girls argue, June ends up falling down the stairs. On the other hand, Ryan witnesses the whole thing and scolds Claire for not thinking clearly. He reminds her that the music box won't do her any good, but Claire isn't ready to let go of it just yet. She even threatens to use one of her remaining 2 wishes on Ryan if he doesn't leave her alone. And when she finally gets home, Claire tells herself that everything will be fine as long as she doesn't use the music box again. However, Claire fails to control herself and wishes that her mother never killed herself. Just like that, Joanna returns to life just in time to celebrate Claire's birthday. Claire can't believe that her mother's back and that she has 2 younger siblings. But then she tries not to overthink and just enjoys her day with her family. But Claire soon discovers that one of her mother's paintings and realizes that she used to own the music box. As everything comes to light, Claire runs outside and warns her father to move away from Carl as he tries to chop off a tree branch with a chainsaw. Unfortunately, the latter moves as Jonathan takes his foot off, and Carl loses his balance, and he ends up decapitating his friend. Devastated, Claire uses her final wish to be taken back to the morning when Jonathan found the music box. Seconds later, Claire wakes up from a nightmare and realizes that her wish came true. Max is even on her bed, and Claire is happy to hear Meredith's voice on the phone and seeing Mrs. DeLuca outside. She then joins Jonathan and Carl in dumpster diving and quickly looks for the music box, hiding it before her father can even see it. After that, Claire goes to school and gives Ryan the music box she's put in a bag, instructing him to never open it. She also kisses Ryan and asks him to dinner, but as soon as they cross the street, Darcy accidentally hits her with her car. The students are shocked to witness as the impact of the crash sends Claire flying and landing onto another vehicle, and none of them even dared to approach their dead schoolmate. Later on, Ryan gets curious and opens the bag containing the music box instead of just burying it, smiling as he realizes it can grant him 7 wishes.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.